Wow, that is quite a move from Tottenham. What did you think when you heard it?
Jealous. Not saying that our manager ain't doing his stuff, but like jealous and pleased for them really, because I think he's a top draw manager. We know that he doesn't stay for many years, but the time that he does stay for, he does something. Things get changed. I think it's a very good appointment. Daniel Levy may have, landed on his feet with this one simply because of the way he's literally been stumbling from manager to manager. And so I think that with this manager, for the time that he'll be there, it's going to be good for Tottenham. It
will have, well, it only took a couple of days, but it will have sort of lit up the WhatsApp groups amongst the players as well. There'll have been lots of chat about it. How do you think, as a player, they'll be looking at the appointment of Conte?
Well, it's always a bit of chaos, I think, when a manager gets sacked and a new one comes in. And this was quick, though, so it was a quick turnaround. And then it's just... What I've always experienced is everyone is on best behaviour, again, straight away. So everyone's training well, training levels go up, everyone's behaving well around the training ground. So in a weird way, as a player, it's like it's an exciting time when a manager changes, because who's it going to be? And then you've got the players that haven't been playing excited because the new guys come in. Then you've got some of the manager's favourites that are a bit insecure now about what's going to happen. So it's just chaotic, and the WhatsApp groups are blowing up all the time with rumours and stuff. It
took them nearly as long to appoint Nuno Espirito Santo as he was in the job. There's not that much between them. But this time around, it's been really quick. It's been really efficient. There's been no chat. There's been no turning down. It feels as though everything is a much more slick operation. What are the factors involved in the differences?
I think the two words: Manchester United. I think that if you look at Manchester United, the fact that they can't defend at all. They've only had 2 clean sheets in the last 22 matches, and even though there was that kind of vote of confidence for Solskjaer after Liverpool humiliation, Spurs knew that if the slide continued, United would come for Conte. Listen, for me, it is insane that you would even dream of persisting with Solskjaer when you have a guy with blue chip credentials there. And Spurs knew, and Conte to an extent knew, that he could use United, or the possible interest of United, as leverage. It meant that Spurs had to get the deal done, given what he wanted. People say, what's the difference between now and summer? Now is Daniel Levy's back is against the wall. You bring in Conte, you guys have played, so you can talk more to what the reaction from the player would be. But if you're Harry Kane, you think to yourself, I want to win things. They brought in a guy who wins things. Just very quickly on the time he spends at clubs, he left Juventus to go to Italy. And then he left, obviously, Juventus brought him back to the club where he won 5 titles as a player. And then he left Chelsea because they bought players that he didn't want. So I was in, you know this story I told you just before, Kelly. I was on the Asia tour after they won the title, and they bought Morata. And he said to us, a little group of us, I'd rather have had Kane, because... And so people sort of think he throws his toys at the pram and walks off. But he did that because they bought players he didn't want. Yeah. And he wins things if you give him what he wants, which is exactly what he did with Inter Milan.
Just before we get on to the sort of nuts and bolts of what his regime and his time at Tottenham, however long that is, might look like, in terms of the overall effect this is going to have on Premier League managers, it's an interesting one because this often happens in the closed season, but it feels as though there's a bit of a November dominoes match going on with the managers.
Yeah, I think it is. And I think what it will do initially, it will really send a little bit of electricity up the top 4, in and around those teams in the top 4. And I'll just give you some numbers to explain why. When he went to Juventus had finished 7th the previous season. They were 24 points off the lead. The following season, they won the league. When he went to Chelsea, they were 10th, 31 points off the lead. The following season, they won the league. When he went to Inter Milan, they were 21 points off the lead. They finished 4th the previous season. They closed the gap to 4 points in the first season, and then the following season, they won the league. So this is a guy who closes gaps. Yeah. People say, oh, well, I tweeted myself, I think that race to top 4 is wide open. And I had lots of cynicism and what social media's like. But the fact is that this guy closes gaps. If you buy into what he wants, he delivers. He's already been training in a 3-5-2 formation with the players. Yeah. So you've got Son and Kane. Again, you guys can talk about what the impact that will be. But I think So you're talking about A, what he does with the team, but B, what he does with the other managers in and around that fight for the top four. For us in the Premier League, it's magnificent. Yeah. For us as newspapermen, it's fantastic. It is not just the fan base that he has electrified. He has also electrified the whole picture in that top half of the Premier League in the race for the top four and even beyond this season. Yeah. The only sad thing is that Emery hasn't come, and then you would have had like a constellation of managerial talent fighting out, you know, all sorts of permutations really for what goes. See, can you see I'm getting excited?
Yeah, but I think what the point that you're making is an interesting one about the knock-on effect, because you mentioned Manchester United, you mentioned Unai Emery and that deal to Newcastle not going ahead. Suddenly they're on the lookout for a manager. Well, Antonio Conte now isn't on that list. If Manchester United, as you said, were to have a bad run of form under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, and if the club were to change their mind and look for a new manager, Antonio Conte is not on that list, and most other super coaches, if you like, are in employment at the moment.
And that's the key thing. People say, why are you getting so excited about him? I mean, they had Mourinho. I would argue with respect to Mourinho, who's past his best by the time he got to Spurs. I know a couple of my colleagues in the papers had written articles even before he'd ever taken charge of a match. The magic had gone. This is a guy who arrives at the top of his managerial game. He inspires players, he attracts players, he's got a consistency of tactics and team selection. This is a guy, if you look at the response from Spurs fans, he has electrified the fan base in a way I've never seen in the 17 years I covered Spurs. And I think he will do the same in terms of the impact he will have on opposition managers. They will be concerned that this is a guy who will turn Spurs into a superpower, and that's and Manchester United. I think the decision-making structure at Man United will think, "What have we done?"
Yeah.
They could well be questioning it. Yeah. There's also, I would imagine, in terms of a supporter's point of view, a part of them that's looking at lacklustre displays where the players maybe look like they're lacking energy and thinking, we quite like somebody to come in and be tough on these players. We'd like that to happen. And it's clear where Spurs need to improve, because this is the distance cover per game. They're right at the bottom of the Premier League. Like that, you know, their direct speed is 19th in the Premier League. So that's the kind of thing that supporters are like, do you know what, if you can't come in and you can't even run and you're not even, it looks to fans as though the effort isn't going in.
And like Ash said, when a new manager comes, you instantly, everything raises. But when a manager comes of that credibility and that level of manager, everything changes. There's no way that's going to be what Tottenham are going to be doing once he's... There's players there in Ndombele, Lo Celso, for a start for me in their midfield. I think that he's very fortunate to have Harry Kane and Son, and we're going to have to see how that pans out in the coming months with Harry Kane. But that midfield, if he can get them two working or something working in that midfield, then you have to say he's got half a chance, because I don't know how they're going to get the ball to those guys. But they're not going to be able to play like I've seen those two guys play up to this point. Interesting what he's going to do with the defence as well. You know, what he's going to do. And this is why for him to be in the position he's been in, and Daniel Levy having to come back now after he turned it down in the summer, he probably has got some unbelievable assurances. Unbelievable. So this is why, you know, at the start when you said about Tottenham jealous because I know the calibre of manager they've got, and so they're going to be putting pressure on us.
And the demands that calibre of manager would have put in place, you, as you say, you would imagine will be met because that it's happened so quickly.
And on top of that, Tottenham are 2 points behind Arsenal. They've lost 5 of their last 7 games. Arsenal are 8 games undefeated. They think they're on a terrific run. So if you think about the gap between them and then the gap between Spurs and the top 4, which is only 5 points, they have got the percent. The only way is up based on no stats. So I'm getting excited.
No, I didn't.
We're 9 games unbeaten.
It's lovely.
We're 9 games unbeaten.
9 games. Every little count.
Everything. You know? But like that, the point you make there, Dan, is you have to look at where Spurs have been and watch them. When you watch Spurs, it's chaotic. Don't know what was going on there. It was, you know, when you watch them, and like Dan said, 2 points behind Arsenal with this manager coming in, with a Harry Kane that is now, like, he's not going to be able to play like we've seen him play.
You know, were you there when Bruce Rioch at Arsenal? When Bruce Rioch?
Yeah.
What was the difference between the end of Bruce Rioch and the start of Arsene Wenger?
I think the end of Bruce Rioch was relief as well for me. And I know a lot of the other players, but they wouldn't say because they were two-faced. I wasn't two-faced. I just sold them straight out. But the fact is...
Or diplomatic.
Yeah, maybe they were diplomatic. They acted like they couldn't. I couldn't actually act like I liked him. But at the same time, we were very excited about Wenger simply because of what great players were saying, what George Weah was saying, what Glenn Hoddle was saying, everything you heard about him and the kind of coach he's going to be. And then when he came, he didn't disappoint simply because of the manner and the way he addressed us and what he wanted to do. And the training sessions and everything changed instantly. So you just bought into everything instantly just because of the gravitas of the man. You know what I mean? What he was capable of doing. And I think that's what's going to happen at Spurs. But for me, when we look at what they play at the back, like Reguilon, I think he's fallen off a little bit. I'm seeing Emerson Royale. I haven't seen it yet. So we're going to, because we know that Conte wants to play that 3-5-2, but like it's going to have to get some players in better than what he's got at the moment for me.
It's interesting, like you say, the change of formation. I'll come back to you on Kane and Son, but you've touched on the defence there as well. And as you said, he's been training this way with the players since he's come in. He's got the game in the Europa League tonight, but it gets started properly with the Premier League at the weekend. At Chelsea, he sort of ran a shadow training session where he had the players training the way he wanted them to play, but didn't bring it in until after a really heavy defeat. And then it picked up for him at Chelsea. Do you think it's important that a manager, particularly in terms of defensive organisation, comes in with a clear message for the players?
Yeah. As a defender myself, you just want to know, majority of the time, as players, we just want to know what you want from us. Don't leave it to us, because I might want something, you want something else, he wants something else. We're just looking at the manager saying, please, like, give us one way and we'll try and execute it. But I think that I don't think he's going to do that. I think he's going to come in and he's not wasting no time. He doesn't play games. It's like, get on board or you're out. And I think he's in the Premier League. He's in the spotlight. We're all looking at him. And I think he's coming to try and do something this season. He's trying to get up there, and he's going to play how he wants to play with that. You know, he likes that 3-5-2 or kind of the 3-4-3. If you look at that, the Italy team from 2016, they played different. I remember watching them thinking, I don't think I've seen football like this, the wing backs, and we've seen it more now since then, but it's like high energy. We look at those stats, that, as you said, that's not going to happen because he's high energy. So normally, you know, the team reflects the manager, I always think, and you can't imagine his team labouring around the park and stuff. He's too vocal, he's too passionate for that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that, and I want to come back to you on that, Darren, because you said that a few times about Nuno, that his manner in press conferences, while not the biggest of his problems, didn't necessarily inspire a sort of feeling of authority. He didn't come across as someone who was a representative of Tottenham in a way that you would recognise it. Am I getting this right?
That's fair.
No, better if you say it, but then Antonio Conte, on the other hand, there's no question of that.
Well, the thing is, the way that we all know that Spurs would like to play is very expressive. They are a very expressive club. And if you look at the managers under whom they've had the most success over the last 2 decades, Harry Redknapp and Mauricio Pochettino, and Martin Jol to a certain extent as well. And they're all kind of guys who have got a bit of charisma about them. And Nuno wasn't that kind of guy. He was very safety first. You left his press conferences very... I don't know, very, not disillusioned, I suppose.
Uninspired?
Uninspired is probably the right word. I'm the journalist, I should be... I get my coat.
It's all right, we'll get you a pen.
or a thesaurus. But, you know, I think as far as Nuno was concerned, he wasn't a good fit for Spurs. He was a cautious manager. He was that way at Wolves. And he was an upgrade for Wolves because he was better than what they'd had. But if you look at the pattern of the recruitment process at Spurs, they'd gone to higher profile managers before, they'd turned their noses up initially at Nuno, and then they came back to him when all the other managers didn't want the job. So it kind of eroded his authority from the start, and that was the big problem he had. He was always behind the curve. I think as far as Conte is concerned, his arrival at the club makes him the most important footballing figure at that club, and that includes Harry Kane, I would argue. If Kane stays, if he goes, good luck to you.
Yeah.
He will reshape that team in his own image.
And like when Nuno come in, like myself, I was thinking that's weird. It just don't feel right at all. But then I remember covering the first game of the season against Man City, and it was excellent. So I was like, oh, maybe it's going to work then. And since then, it's just fell away. But what I think, and Conte comes in now with, doesn't have that whole Harry Kane hangover from the summer. So it's fresh. There's no, I'm sure that there was an issue with Harry Kane and Nuno and everything because of what happened, that maybe they couldn't get past it. And Spurs need Harry Kane at his best. Conte comes in now. One, I don't think, like you say, Conte comes in with his own self-esteem to say, I don't bow down to Harry Kane or nobody else in this dressing room. I'm me. And the players have to listen to what he's going to say. And he doesn't have no history about what happened, you know, with Man City and Harry Kane.
Well, you know, we on this show, do you remember the debate we had? I think Tim was here, and we were sort of saying, Tim, we disagreed on whether Kane should go straight back into the side after those 3 wins when they'd won without him. My argument was, you know, Harry Kane at his best, any team would want Harry Kane. But essentially, those players had done it all without him while all of that stuff was going on in the summer of the transfer thing. So maybe they should be given the chance to continue playing without him, and he should force his way back into the side. And I get that it seemed like a heresy at the time, but certainly Conte will come back in, and Conte will decide when Harry Kane plays, not Harry Kane. And the interesting thing about that is over the last 3, 4, 5 seasons, I have always been fascinated at the sight of Kane in meaningless Europa League games or FA Cup third round ties or League Cup games. You don't need to play in those games. If you look at West Ham, Antonio doesn't even feature in the Europa League squad. He is saved for the Premier League. And it could be argued that Kane's injuries come from him playing too much. I mean, again, you guys know better than me on that. Conte will decide when he plays now.
Yes.
And if he doesn't want to be part of what Conte wants to do, remember, Conte would have got rid of Diego Costa at Chelsea, had Chelsea not been unhappy at him devaluing him by making it public. So I think Conte now is the most important footballing figure at Tottenham, and he's another reason why they've made such a good signing.
I think as well with Kane, knowing that Conte wanted Kane at one stage, he did want him probably. If he was going to stay long enough and Costa went, Kane would have maybe would have gone to Chelsea. I believe that he'll go in there and he already knows what's going to happen with Harry Kane, because for me, if Conte is going to be able to stay there and do what he needs to do, and they're going to back him, and Harry Kane still wants to leave, I believe he sells him. No, he doesn't even think twice, because I think Nuno came in and it's almost like Nuno was expecting Harry Kane to be gone, and when he was there, he kind of didn't know what to do with him and how to play him and how to manage him. Because you look at the games that Harry Kane was playing, and we're talking about us laughing at Manchester City only wanting to pay £100 million for this guy, and you watch him how he's been playing recently, and it's not good. You would say £100 million, would you pay £100 million for Harry Kane in current form? So someone like Conte will go in and literally look him in the eye and find out where he is, what's going to happen. Is that going to happen? Okay, can we get this for him? We'll get him out and then we'll go again, because that's the kind of manager now that Spurs are dealing with. And the Tottenham fans should be electrified by this guy coming in, because he is a no-nonsense manager. He's a no-nonsense manager, and there's too many players at Spurs now. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with Dele Alli. You know, because what is happening with Dele Alli? I know Son's come in as that second striker, Ash, and that Darren, and it seems like it's negated Dele completely. They've tried to play him in the midfield. It hasn't worked. It's going to be interesting to see if he can get something out of him, because we're talking about a great player.
Remember when Mourinho first came in?
Yeah.
And there were a few brilliant games from Dele Alli where he looked as though he was, if not quite at his peak, but getting back to there. I wonder if a sort of stricter,
I think that someone like
manager is suited to him.
Because the thing with Mourinho, it's like he wants to be in opposition with someone. He wants to upset somebody. He wants to have that person who's the one that he has as that's the guy I don't like at the moment. I'm giving him a chance. He's not taking it. See, when I gave him a chance, he doesn't do it. Conte won't do that with him. If he can get something out of him, he'll try and get it out of him. But if he can't, again, he's got no qualms in moving that on and doing what he wants to do. This is why it's very exciting what's happening, what's going to happen at Tottenham now, with Daniel Levy having to make sure he backs him, like he didn't back Mauricio Pochettino. Let's face it, this is why we're in the place where we are with Tottenham, you know, because of Daniel Levy and the decisions he's made. So he's now, hopefully, he's learned his lesson by stumbling into into Conte because of the Nuno appointment. And now he, for me, has got arguably one of the best managers in the world.
And like you said, he's going to be the most important figure at the club. But one of his most important jobs is going to be getting the best out of Harry Kane.
Yeah.
As you said, the performances this season compared to how they were last, you can put numbers on it if you want to, and you can see the drop-off in that way. I mean, you talked about the fact that if he doesn't want to be involved, if he doesn't want to kind of adapt to Conte, then he'll have no qualms about not playing him or not having him at the club. Is there... Look, there's lots of areas that you could look at in terms of improving Harry Kane. But will you see... But, you know, we're talking about, you know, there's not going to be the same hangover in the relationship from the summer.
Yes.
Conte's not involved in that. Is there also a sense in a player of Harry Kane's calibre, a manager of Conte's calibre coming together and then seeing the raise, a natural raise maybe in Harry Kane's
We will see that because of the calibre of the manager. Harry Kane is... If I was Conte, I'd go in and I'd show him those stats. I'd show him those stats and say, this is where you are right now. What Harry Kane are we going to get? Are you ready to play here? Whether you're going to leave at some stage or not, I can't accept those stats. No way. Not for the player that you are and what you're capable of doing.
And they'll have more in-depth, sophisticated numbers as well.
Absolutely. But the thing is, you look at it, you watch how he's walking around on the pitch, how he's playing on the pitch. His mind is not there. So this is the kind of manager that will focus his mind.
Yeah, and I think if you use another example, is Romelu Lukaku, who I spoke to, and he loved Conte, loved him, and really felt like he raised his game. So, and this is a player we watched at Man United, and everyone was a bit like, something's not right, he's not playing up to his full potential. He goes there, and he does. He plays good. So he knows how to get the best out of a striker. He knows how to up a striker's game. And just listening to how Rom talks about him as a manager, if he can get that from Harry Kane, and what you're saying, you know, when I played, if I knew the manager coming in liked me, I knew from someone, my agent told me, or he wanted to buy me before, straight away I'm happy with him. I'm happy with him. I know he likes me. I don't have to win him over. I've already won him over. And if that's the case, and you match those two things up with the passion that Conte shows, maybe Harry Kane goes back to the form that we're used to seeing. You
hope so, Ash. But the thing is, Dan, what I'd ask you is, in respects of Harry Kane and what happened in the summer, that can't just all of a sudden Conte comes in, even with his, you know, his experience and his managerial style, all of a sudden convince him to stay at Tottenham if he wanted to go. So what happens now with Harry Kane's mental state now, because he's got a manager that might be able to take him to the promised land and winning the Premier League or something, and he's still got Man City who may or may not come back. We don't know what's been said for January. So what happens now?
I almost think he's spoilt for choice, because if you think
even
about,
at his age,
at his age, because if you think about Diego Costa, for example, he won the title with Conte in that first season. And Conte is a guy who will say to him, I bet on myself. I look at this squad of players. I think I can make this defence better. If you look at Romero in central defence, for example, best defender. It was at Atalanta last season, one of the best defenders in Serie A. So straight away, you're thinking, potentially you have a leader in that defence, which they haven't had for a long time. It just needs someone to empower him, as Conte will, with a very defined team structure. I think if you look at Kane as a player, you mentioned Lukaku. Not only did he get him scoring goals, but he had him on a diet that basically made him much more sleek, more slimline, a white meat and vegetables diet, improved his movement, improved his dynamism.
But remember, they detected that he had a digestive problem. Something that people were saying when he was at Man United, again with Romelu Lukaku. This is why you have to question what's going on at Man United, the medical side of it. He had a digestive problem, which they found in 2 weeks at Inter Milan. So then they put him on this diet, and then you saw what he's done. And you saw what he's done with himself.
And straight away, that says to you, he has a team of people that are very skilled at identifying ways to improve players. And so as much as Kane wants to win things, we talk about his age. Lewandowski scored the other day, I think it was his 100th goal or something, 81, and he's 33. You know, so if you look after yourself, if you find ways to get that, you know, you played with players who played today with 36 and 37 or winning titles.
I played till I was 36.
There you go. So I think as far as Conte is concerned, if I'm Kane, I'd bet on Conte. myself. I think, listen, Kane loves Spurs, and I feel a little bit sorry for him in so much as he was unhappy. But why was he unhappy? Because Spurs, they've won one trophy in 2 decades, and they kept ploughing along this same holding pattern that has seen Bale leave, Eriksen leave, Walker leave, so many top players leave, go elsewhere, win silverware. He wanted to do the same. They kept him. He is human. We would be unhappy. Conte coming in changes all of that. He's got the choice to go City or Spurs. Listen, you're a striker, you tell me, but I think if I'm Kane, I bet on Conte.
And playing with Son as well, and how they get the best out of them. But City, if they come in, I mean, they're going to be hard to turn down. You're expecting you're going to win a trophy. Do you think Manchester City are more likely to win a trophy this season and next season than Tottenham, even with Conte there?
Yeah, I do.
So in that case, then that would be something that Kane would factor in.
It's a very tough decision, because if you are going to bet on a manager that might come in and change it for you and give you that trophy what you want, then Conte is going to be one of those guys. But if one of that guy, but if I'm sitting there now as Harry Kane, I feel like I want to go and win it, because I know what people are like. If he stops playing with the unbelievable goal record what he's got, he deserves something. You don't get it just by deserving it. You have to make the decisions to get you into the place to win it. And if he doesn't, I tell you, he'd be very sorry if he finishes his career and not have anything to show. He'd be sorry.
What do you do with Kane and Son?
In what way? What do you mean?
Well, in terms of what would you do if you were Conte to get? I mean, really, we're talking about getting the best out of Harry Kane. Do you like him in that too with Son? It's not, and how do you think it works best? Well, it's not your sort of traditional strike partnership, is it?
But at the same time, Son, like I say, is that second striker. I would, if I'm being totally honest, at this stage of Harry Kane's career, I'd like to see him more at top of the pitch, not coming so deep where you're seeing. You're looking at those stats, and one of them had something like 18 shots. He's normally had 38, something 40 by now. He's not in the place where he needs to be. I think that he should be there, leaving Son to come in from where he comes in from. And then there's certain times where you're further up the pitch, Ash, where it's natural for him to come deep, for Son to go long, so he could put the balls in, so he can use his pace. But in the main, I want my main striker in the box when the ball's coming in. Harry Kane's in there. Too many times I've seen Harry Kane is nowhere near the box. Nowhere near the box, and that is what I think that Conte will sort out sooner rather than later.
And this is the thing about, I was saying about, he will determine when Harry plays. He will determine where Harry Kane plays. He will say, I want you as a penalty box player. And I almost wonder if once he starts to do that, we'll start to see that for England as well. Hopefully. Because for a long time, Harry Kane literally is, I don't mean this in a negative way, because his 3 golden boots and the World Cup golden boot, he's not doing too badly, you know. But at the same time, he's been drifting outside of the area where he does his best work and trying to score world-class.
He's Pomo.
He's good. You know, you could get a whole clip reel of goals he scored against me personally. In the box. In the box. In the box. Yeah. And like, he's deadly in the box.
You could do that for Harry Kane against any defender.
He's deadly.
Yeah, but you say to Ash is a centre half. If you see Harry Kane going deep into there, Ash, are you happy?
I'm happy all day. Please go there. But you know what? He's talented enough to go and link play in there, great, but they have other players to do that. Yes. They don't have other players to be as deadly as he is. And he plays in between centre halves, and his movement is just so good within the box, and his finishing. Why would you not want him there? If I'm the manager, I don't want Harry Kane linking or doing anything. Listen, go that way, work with your mate Son. Between the two of you, you're going to put both of them on the pitch as much as possible, obviously. Figure it out, but Kane, I need you on the end of every single cross.
It's when you watch Costa at Chelsea and how he got Cesc Fabregas and Costa. It was scintillating. And this is why it's so important. People like, I'm so pleased, people like Lo Celso and Ndombele, they're going to have to get themselves going now, because he's not going to let them get away with the way they've been playing, because if they can get Harry Kane and Son, remember, as well, going as well, because his Son needs to get himself going as well, they need service. And if you get them going, that's goals. Them two are goals.
Spurs fans are going to be so excited about what the future holds for them. We'll be talking about them a lot more over the coming weeks, and we'll be reflecting on Antonio Conte's first match in charge of Spurs in the Premier League this time next week, I'm sure.